The cold was all Lyra had ever known. It wrapped around her body like an unwanted embrace, seeping through her thin protective suit and into her bones. As she drove the plasma drill deeper into the ice sheet, her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the relentless chill that defined existence on Aloria. Unit 7219, increase output by 20%. The mechanical voice of the overseer drone buzzed in her ear. Extraction quotas have been raised. Lyra didn't respond. Speaking wasn't required, only obedience. She adjusted the drill settings and pressed harder against the glittering blue ice. The vibrations traveled up her arms, numbing them further, if that was even possible. Around her, dozens of other workers. She refused to think of them as slaves, though that's what they were, performed the same task in perfect, terrified unison. The Light Extraction Corporation didn't tolerate deviations from protocol. Not on Aloria, where the ice held the most valuable resource in the galaxy, crystallized light. Somehow, through processes Lyra couldn't comprehend, this frozen world trapped pure energy within its glaciers. Energy that powered everything from interstellar travel to the floating cities of Centauri Prime. A scream cut through the constant whine of drills. Lyra's head jerked up, her enhanced vision focusing instantly on the source. 20 meters away, a worker had collapsed. The overseer drones were already descending, mechanical arms extended. The worker, Lyra recognized her as Talia. Another Aldari hybrid like herself, was convulsing, blue light seeping from her eyes and mouth. Contamination detected, announced the lead drone. Unit 6184 will be processed for purification. Lyra knew what that meant. Talia had been exposed to raw light crystal. Now she would be processed, a clinical term for having the light extracted from her body. The corporation would harvest the energy, and whatever remained of Talia would be disposed of in the great crevasse at the edge of the mining sector. Something snapped inside Lyra. Perhaps it was watching the light pour from Talia's eyes, or perhaps it was the casual manner in which the drones announced her death sentence. But in that moment, as the Arctic wind howled across the mining site, Lyra made a decision. She moved before she could reconsider, abandoning her drill and sprinting toward the edge of the excavation zone. Alarms blared instantly, red lights flashing across the ice field. The voice of Security Chief Marston echoed through the worksite. Escape attempt in Sector 7. All units converge. Repeat, all units converge. Lyra ran faster than she ever had, her Aldari genetics giving her speed beyond human capability. The perimeter fence loomed ahead, a shimmering barrier of energy that had contained her for the past 6 years. She had seen others try to cross it. None had survived. But Lyra had an advantage. During her time maintaining the fence generators, she had discovered a flaw, a 3-second delay in the eastern quadrant when the power cycled. If she timed it perfectly. The whine of pursuit craft filled the air. Lyra counted silently, watching the subtle flicker in the fence's glow. 1, 2, 3. She hurled herself forward, passing through the momentary gap as energy crackled around her. Pain seared across her back. But she was through, tumbling into the snow beyond. No time to celebrate. The security forces would be upon her in seconds. Lyra staggered to her feet and raced toward the frozen wastes, the vast expanse of uncharted ice fields that surrounded the mining complex. No one ventured there willingly. The temperature dropped to levels that could freeze blood in veins, and blizzards could materialize without warning. But Lyra had nowhere else to go. The bitter wind slashed at her face as she pushed deeper into the wastes. Already, the mining complex was fading from view, swallowed by the swirling snow. The tracking chip embedded in her neck would lead them to her, but perhaps the storm would buy her time. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time lost meaning in the endless white. Lyra's legs finally gave out, and she collapsed into a drift. The cold was absolute now, a living entity consuming her from the outside in. Her enhanced body could withstand more than a human's. But even she had limits. As consciousness began to fade, Lyra looked up at the alien sky. Through a break in the clouds, she could see stars, distant, cold points of light that had never seemed so beautiful. If this was freedom, at least she would die under the open sky rather than beneath the corporation's dome. Hey, can you hear me? The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, muffled by the howling wind. Lyra tried to focus, but her vision was fading. Strong hands gripped her shoulders, lifting her from the snow. Through frost-laden eyelashes, she glimpsed a figure in a thermal suit, face obscured by a protective mask. "Hang on," the figure said, voice clearer now. Male. Young. "I've got you." Lyra wanted to fight, to run, but her body refused to respond. As darkness claimed her, one thought remained. She had escaped the light only to be consumed by the dark. Warmth. That was Lyra's first sensation as consciousness returned. A warmth so profound it almost hurt. Her eyes fluttered open to unfamiliar surroundings. Metal walls, dim lighting, the soft hum of machinery. "Welcome back," said a voice to her right. Lyra jerked upright, instantly alert, her body tensing for fight or flight. The sudden movement sent pain lancing through her limbs, and she gasped. "Easy," said the same voice. "You've been unconscious for nearly 16 hours. Severe hypothermia, plus some nasty energy burns from that fence you went through." The speaker was a young man, perhaps in his late 20s by human standards. He had unkempt dark hair, a face that seemed perpetually amused, and eyes that studied her with undisguised curiosity. He wore a simple thermal suit, unadorned by corporate logos or identification markers. "Who are you?" Lyra demanded, her voice hoarse. "Where am I?" "I'm Kai," he replied, leaning back in his chair. "As for where, let's call it my humble abode. A temporary research station on asteroid J73, currently drifting at the outer edge of Aloria's orbit." Lyra glanced around, taking in details with her enhanced vision. The room was small, but efficiently designed, a combination of living quarters and laboratory. Equipment she didn't recognize lined the walls, and through a small viewport, she could see the endless black of space. "You're a long way from the mining complex," Kai continued, watching her carefully. "I spotted you during my surface expedition. Lucky timing." "Why help me?" Lyra asked, suspicion evident in her tone. No one on Eloria did anything without expecting something in return. Kai shrugged. "Couldn't exactly leave you to freeze, could I? Besides, it's not every day I encounter an escaped Eldari hybrid. The corporation keeps your kind under tight control." Lyra tensed. "How did you—" "The bioluminescent markings on your temples," Kai interrupted, gesturing to his own face. "Plus your eyes, vertical pupils, silver irises, classic Eldari traits, though muted by the human DNA they mixed in." A wave of shame washed over Lyra. She had never seen another Eldari, only reflections of herself. The corporation had created her and others like her for a specific purpose. Their enhanced bodies could withstand conditions that would kill humans, making them perfect for ice mining operations. "Are you going to turn me in?" she asked, cutting to the heart of her fear. Kai's expression hardened. "No, I have no love for the Light Extraction Corporation. Their mining operations are destroying this planet, and their treatment of synthetic life forms like yourself is barbaric." "I'm not synthetic," Lyra snapped. "I'm alive. I think." "Poor choice of words," Kai conceded, raising his hands in apology. "I meant no offense. Genetically engineered. Then, the point is, you're safe here. For now." Lyra wasn't convinced, but her options were limited. She was somewhere in orbit around Eloria, aboard an asteroid with a stranger who claimed to be her savior. Running wasn't possible, not unless she planned to launch herself into the vacuum of space. "What do you do here?" she asked, trying to gather more information. "Research, Mostly, Kai replied, standing and moving to a console. I'm an engineer by training. The corporation hired me to develop more efficient extraction methods, but I had ethical disagreements with their approach. Now I work independently, studying Eloria's unique properties. A new voice joined the conversation, emanating from hidden speakers. He means he's hiding from responsibility while pretending to conduct important research. Kai rolled his eyes. And that charming commentary comes from Mira, my AI companion. Don't mind her. She has strong opinions about everything. I have accurate assessments based on observable data, the AI corrected. And my current assessment is that our guest needs nutrition and hydration, not your life story. As if on cue, Lyra's stomach rumbled. She couldn't remember her last meal before the escape attempt. Certainly. Kai nodded. Mira's right. Let me get you something to eat, and then we can talk more. He disappeared through a doorway, leaving Lyra alone with the invisible AI presence. She took the opportunity to assess her condition. Someone, Kai, presumably, had treated her injuries and dressed her in clean clothes. Simple thermals, similar to what he wore. Her corporation uniform was nowhere to be seen. He burned your tracker, the AI said, as if reading her thoughts. The one embedded in your neck. He extracted and destroyed it while treating your injuries. Lyra's hand flew to her neck, feeling a small bandage where the tracking chip had been. How did he know? All corporation property is tracked, Mira replied, her tone softer now. And yes, I understand the implication of that statement. I apologize. Before Lyra could respond, Kai returned carrying a tray of food, real food, not the protein paste that had been her sustenance at the mining complex. The sight and smell of it brought tears to her eyes. It's not gourmet, Kai said, misinterpreting her reaction. But it's better than corporation rations. Lyra took the tray with trembling hands. Thank you. As she ate, savoring each bite, Kai explained more about his situation. He had been working for the corporation for 3 years before his ethical disagreement, which involved refusing to implement a harvesting technology that would have accelerated ice melt and destabilized Eloria's already fragile ecosystem. Rather than face reassignment to a less desirable post, he had staged an accident and escaped with a significant amount of research equipment to this asteroid. The corporation thinks I'm dead, he concluded, and I'd like to keep it that way. They'll be looking for me, Lyra said quietly. If they find me here. They won't, Kai assured her. This asteroid is composed of materials that block standard scanning technologies. It's why I chose it. As long as we don't broadcast signals or venture too close to corporate patrols, we're invisible. Kai is being optimistic, as usual, Mira interjected. The corporation has increased patrol activity by 27% since your escape. They're taking your disappearance seriously. Lyra set down her empty plate, a cold dread settling in her stomach. Why would they care so much about one worker? There are hundreds of us. Kai and Mira exchanged a digital glance, Kai looking up at the ceiling where her sensors were presumably located. You're not just any worker, Kai said finally. The Aldari human hybrids are valuable intellectual property. The corporation spent billions developing your genetic line. But more importantly, you witnessed something they don't want getting out. The processing of contaminated workers, correct? Lyra nodded slowly. My friend Talia. She was exposed to raw crystal. They were going to harvest the light from her. Exactly, Kai said grimly. The corporation has managed to keep that particular practice secret from the Galactic Council. If word got out that they're essentially sacrificing workers to extract light energy, there would be serious repercussions. But now you know, said a new voice from the doorway. Lyra whirled around to see a tall, imposing figure filling the entrance. He wore the gray uniform of corporation security, a plasma pistol holstered at his hip. His face was weathered, with a scar running from temple to jaw, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator. Kai stepped forward, positioning himself between Lyra and the newcomer. "She's under my protection, Jex." The man, Jex, snorted. "Protection? You can barely protect yourself, engineer. The only reason you're still breathing is because I've kept your little hideout off official reports." "You know each other?" Lyra asked, confused and terrified. "Jex supplies me with information and the occasional resource in exchange for technology that helps him look good to his superiors," Kai explained, not taking his eyes off the security officer. "A mutually beneficial arrangement." "Until now," Jex said, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. "Do you have any idea what's happening down there since she escaped?" "Admiral Veros himself has taken command of the search operation. He's implemented martial law across all mining sectors." "Varos?" Kai paled visibly. "The head of corporate security?" "The very same," Jex confirmed. "He's offering a substantial reward for information leading to the capture of Unit 7219, or Lyra, as you seem to be calling it." "Her," Kai corrected automatically. "And why would Veros involve himself personally? This can't just be about one escaped worker, even an Aldari hybrid." Jex's expression darkened. "That's what I came to tell you. This goes beyond a simple escape or witnessed processing. According to classified files I accessed, your Lyra here is carrying something valuable, something in her genetic code that the corporation needs." All eyes turned to Lyra, who shrank back in confusion. "I don't understand. I'm just like the others, created to work in the ice fields." "No," Jex said, shaking his head. "You're part of a specialized batch. Your genetic structure contains a unique sequence that allows you to absorb and process light energy without the fatal consequences that affected your friend. The corporation was planning to begin harvesting procedures on you within the week." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Lyra felt suddenly hollow, as if her insides had been scooped out and replaced with ice. She had suspected the corporation viewed her as property, but to learn she had been created specifically for harvesting. "They can't have her," Kai said firmly, breaking the silence. "I won't allow it." Jex laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Noble, but naive. Veros has deployed hunter drones across the surface and orbital patrol ships throughout the system. It's only a matter of time before they expand their search radius to include this asteroid." "Then we need to leave," Kai said, already moving toward the control console. "Mira, prepare the propulsion system. We'll detach from orbit and make for the outer system." "That won't work," Jex countered. "The moment you fire engines, every patrol ship in the quadrant will detect the energy signature." "Then what do you suggest?" Kai demanded. "Since you seem to have all the answers." Jex's hand moved from his holster to a pocket inside his uniform. He withdrew a small data chip and tossed it onto the table. "Patrol schedules and security codes for the next 3 cycles. There's a blind spot in coverage near the ice moons tomorrow at 0600 hours. If you're going to run, that's your window." Lyra stared at the security officer, unable to reconcile his actions with his uniform. "Why are you helping us?" Jex met her gaze, and for a moment, she glimpsed something like remorse in his eyes. "I've been with corporation security for 15 years. I've done things, followed orders, that I can't take back. But watching Veros prepare harvesting chambers for living beings, there has to be a line somewhere." He turned to leave, then paused. "I was never here, and Kai, if you're caught, I expect you to maintain that fiction." After he was gone, Lyra and Kai sat in stunned silence until Mira spoke. "I've analyzed the data chip. The information appears legitimate, though I recommend caution. Jex's loyalty remains uncertain." Kai nodded absently, already lost in planning mode. "We'll need to prep the propulsion system, gather supplies. Lyra, how are you feeling? Strong enough to travel?" But Lyra barely heard him. Her mind was spinning with revelations about her creation, her purpose, the fate that had awaited her, and beneath it all, a question burned. If she was designed to process light energy, what else was she capable of? "Lyra?" Kai prompted again, concern evident in his voice. She looked up, meeting his gaze with newfound resolve. "I want to know everything about what I am, and then I want to stop them from doing this to anyone else." Kai's expression shifted from concern to something like admiration. "Well," he said with a small smile, "I suppose hiding was getting boring anyway." Beyond the viewport, Aloria glittered like a blue-white gem against the blackness of space. Beautiful and deadly. A prison Lyra had escaped, but one that still held countless others, like her, in its frozen grip. On the bridge of the corporate flagship Relentless, Admiral Veros studied the holographic display of Aloria with cold intensity. The planet rotated slowly before him, sectors highlighted in different colors, indicating search progress. Too much blue, not enough green. "Report," he commanded, not looking up from the display. Captain Alara stepped forward, her posture rigid. "No sign of Unit 7219, sir. We've deployed hunter drones across all probable escape vectors and expanded orbital scans to include the outer system." "And the processing centers?" "Operational and standing by, Admiral. The harvesting chambers are prepared to receive the subject immediately upon capture." Varos finally looked up, fixing his subordinate with a stare that had broken stronger individuals. "This is not just any subject, Captain. Unit 7219 represents the culmination of decades of genetic research. It is the only specimen to successfully incorporate the light processing gene without degradation. Without it, the Luminous Project cannot proceed." "Understood, sir," Alara replied, careful to keep her expression neutral. "May I ask what makes this unit different from the others?" Varos considered the question. Information was power, and he rarely shared it without purpose. But in this case, understanding the stakes might motivate his officers to greater efforts. "The Aldari species possesses a natural ability to absorb and redirect energy," he explained. "Unfortunately, they proved resistant to corporate interests. The hybrid program was initiated to harness this ability while ensuring obedience. Most hybrids can absorb small amounts of light energy, but their bodies burn out quickly. You've witnessed the processing." Alara nodded. She had overseen several such procedures, though the memory still disturbed her sleep. "Unit 7219 is different," Veros continued. "Its genetic structure contains a stabilizing sequence that allows continuous absorption and storage of light energy without degradation. Imagine, Captain, a living battery that can be harvested repeatedly, potentially for decades." "That would revolutionize energy production," Alara acknowledged, the implications dawning on her. "The corporation would no longer need the ice fields." "Precisely, which is why failure to recapture this asset is not an option." Veros turned back to the holographic display. "Expand the search grid. I want every ship, every drone, every available resource dedicated to finding Unit 7219. And Captain." "Sir?" "When we find it, I want it taken alive, but anyone harboring it is expendable. Clear?" "Crystal clear, Admiral." As Alara departed to relay his orders, Veros studied the slowly rotating planet below. Somewhere out there, his prize was hiding. A living battery. Yes, but also the key to his ascension within the corporation. With the Luminous Project under his control, even the board of directors would be forced to acknowledge his vision. He would find Unit 7219, and when he did, the real work could begin. Lyra awoke with a gasp, phantom light pouring from her eyes and mouth as it had from Talia's. The nightmare lingered, too real, too possible. "Just a dream," she whispered to herself. But the words rang hollow in the quiet of her small cabin aboard Kai's asteroid base. 3 days had passed since Jex's visit. 3 days of preparation, of learning, of confronting the truth about herself. Kai had accessed corporation files on the Aldari hybrid program, revealing to Lyra the full extent of what she was, and what the corporation intended for her. The knowledge was both empowering and terrifying. She was unique among the hybrids. Her genetic code containing a stabilizing sequence that allowed her to process light energy without fatal consequences. In the corporation's eyes, this made her the perfect renewable resource, a living battery to be drained and recharged repeatedly. Lyra rose from her bunk and moved to the small viewport. Outside, the stars were constant companions, unchanging and indifferent to her plight. Somewhere among them, corporation ships were searching, expanding their grid with each passing hour. Soon, they would find this asteroid, despite its scanning-resistant properties. Time was running out. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, already knowing it would be Kai. Mira didn't need to knock. The door slid open, revealing the engineer. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he'd been working through the night again. "I've been reviewing the patrol data from Jex," he said without preamble. "Our window opens in 6 hours. If we're going to move, it has to be then." Lyra nodded. "Where will we go?" "I have contacts in the outer colonies," Kai replied. "People who oppose the corporation's practices. They might be willing to help, especially when they learn what the corporation has been doing with the hybrids." "And if they're not willing to help, Kai's expression softened. "Then we keep moving. But we can't stay here. Lyra, Jex's latest transmission confirms that search patterns are expanding. It's only a matter of time." Lyra turned back to the viewport, staring out at the cold stars. "I keep thinking about the others, all the hybrids still trapped in the mining complex, unaware that they're being prepared for harvesting. If we just run..." "We can't save them if we're captured," Kai pointed out gently. "The best chance they have, the best chance anyone has of exposing the corporation's practices, is for us to reach the outer colonies and present our evidence to the Galactic Council." He was right. Of course. Logically, strategically, their course was clear, but logic did little to ease the weight in Lyra's chest. "There's something else," Kai continued, moving to stand beside her at the viewport. "Something I discovered while analyzing your genetic profile, the light processing ability. It's not just passive storage. Under the right conditions, you might be able to redirect the energy." Lyra turned to him, suddenly alert. "What do you mean?" "I mean you could potentially control the light energy you absorb. Focus it, channel it. The corporation designed you as a battery, but they may have inadvertently created something more." The implications were staggering. If she could control the energy... But no, that was a dangerous path. Power had a way of corrupting, of twisting even the noblest intentions. "I don't want to be a weapon, Kai," she said quietly. "I've seen what the corporation does with power. I won't become that." Kai nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Not a weapon, a catalyst, maybe, for change." Before Lyra could respond, Mira's voice filled the room, tension evident in her usually calm tones. "Proximity alert. Corporation patrol vessel approaching from Vector 227. Current trajectory suggests random patrol pattern, but they will pass within visual range in approximately 17 minutes. Kai's expression hardened. "So much for our 6-hour window. Mira, power down all non-essential systems. Minimum life support only." "Already done," the AI responded. "I've also activated the external camouflage system, but it won't fool active scans if they decide to run one." "We need to hide," Kai said, already moving toward the door. "The maintenance shaft below the primary lab has shielding that might mask our life signs." Lyra followed him through the corridors of the small base, fear and determination warring within her. The maintenance shaft was little more than a crawl space, cramped and cold, with pipes and conduits running along its length. "In here," Kai directed, lifting a floor panel to reveal the narrow space beneath. "Quickly." Lyra descended into the darkness, Kai following close behind. The panel closed above them, sealing them in with only the dim glow of emergency lighting to see by. "Now we wait," Kai whispered, his breath forming small clouds in the chilled air. "And hope they're not being thorough today." Minutes crawled by in tense silence. Above them, Mira had gone quiet to minimize power signatures. The only sounds were their breathing and the occasional ping of cooling metal. Then came a new sound, the faint but unmistakable hum of a ship's engines passing close by. "They're here," Kai breathed, barely audible. Lyra closed her eyes, focusing on remaining absolutely still. Her enhanced hearing picked up subtle vibrations through the asteroid structure. The patrol ship, so close now that its gravitational field was affecting the asteroid's rotation. Would they scan? Would they see through the camouflage and shielding? A sudden jolt rocked the asteroid, sending loose tools clattering to the floor around them. "They've deployed a grappling beam," Kai hissed, alarm evident in his voice. "They're pulling us in for inspection." Panic threatened to overwhelm Lyra. If they were captured, there would be no escape from Veros. For Kai, it would mean execution. For her, a fate perhaps worse, an eternity as a living battery, drained and refilled until her mind broke from the endless cycle. "We have to detach," she said urgently. "Fire the engines and break away." Kai shook his head. "The moment we power up engines, they'll know exactly what we are and open fire. We wouldn't make it 100 meters. Then what? We just surrender." Another jolt, stronger this time. The asteroid was being pulled inexorably toward the patrol ship. "I need to reach the control room," Kai decided. "There's a fail-safe protocol, a simulated core breach. If I can activate it, they might release us rather than risk being caught in the explosion." "And if they don't?" "Then at least we choose our end," Kai said grimly. He reached for the panel above them, but Lyra caught his arm. "Wait. There's another way." The idea had been forming in her mind since their earlier conversation about her abilities. It was risky, untested, but it might be their only chance. "I can create a diversion, something that will make them release the grappling beam." Kai's expression was skeptical but hopeful. "How?" "The light energy," Lyra explained. "You said I might be able to redirect it. If I can channel enough power through the asteroid's outer hull, it could disrupt their sensors, maybe even damage the grappling mechanism." Kai finished, understanding dawning. "But Lyra, you've never attempted anything like this. The strain could be dangerous. More dangerous than being captured." Another violent jolt answered for him. They were running out of time. "What do you need?" Kai asked. "Decision made. Access to the asteroid's outer hull and a few minutes without interruption." They moved quickly, abandoning the maintenance shaft for a small airlock near the asteroid's surface. The area was cold. The environmental systems powered down to avoid detection. Lyra's breath formed crystals in the frigid air. "This section of hull is only a few centimeters thick," Kai explained, indicating a panel along the wall. "And it's directly between us and the patrol ship. If you're going to affect their systems, this is the place to do it." Lyra nodded, placing her palms against the freezing metal. She could feel the vibrations of the grappling beam through the hull, a steady pulse pulling them toward capture. "I'll give you privacy," Kai said, stepping back. "But be careful, Lyra. We don't know the limits of your abilities yet." As he retreated to the corridor outside, Lyra closed her eyes and focused inward. The corporation had created her to absorb and store light energy, but they had never taught her to use it. She would have to discover that for herself. She thought of Talia, of the light pouring from her eyes and mouth as the contamination overtook her. That had been uncontrolled, chaotic. Lyra needed precision, direction. Reaching deeper, She found it, a reservoir of energy within her cells, dormant but potent. The accumulated light from years working in the ice fields, absorbing the refracted glow of Aloria's frozen surface. It hummed through her veins, waiting to be channeled. Lyra inhaled deeply, drawing the energy upward from her core and into her limbs. Her skin began to glow faintly, illuminating the darkened airlock with a soft, blue radiance. The sensation was strange, not painful, but intense, like standing too close to a fire. Concentrating. She directed the energy through her palms and into the asteroid's hull. The metal warmed beneath her touch, then began to vibrate at a frequency that matched the grappling beam. Resonance. That was the key. Lyra pushed harder, forcing more energy into the hull. The vibrations increased, creating a feedback loop that traveled along the grappling beam and back to the patrol ship. Through the hull, she could feel the ship's systems reacting, alarms likely blaring as sensors detected the unexpected energy surge. The strain was immense. Sweat beaded on Lyra's forehead despite the cold, and her vision blurred at the edges. But she maintained the connection, feeding more power into the resonance pattern. Suddenly, the constant pull of the grappling beam faltered. Once, twice, then disappeared entirely. "They've released us!" Kai's voice called from the corridor. "Mira confirms the patrol ship is backing off, reading damage to their primary systems." Lyra sagged against the hull, exhaustion washing over her. The glow faded from her skin, leaving her drained but triumphant. She had done it, used her abilities not as the corporation intended, but for freedom. Kai appeared in the airlock doorway, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "That was incredible. Are you all right?" "Tired," Lyra admitted. "But they're gone?" "Retreating at full speed," Kai confirmed with a grin. "Whatever you did, it scared them off. But they'll be back, probably with reinforcements. We need to move immediately." He helped her to her feet, supporting her as they made their way back to the control room. Mira had restored power to essential systems, and the displays showed the patrol ship moving rapidly away from their position. "The blind spot near the ice moons that Jex mentioned," Lyra said, sinking into a chair. "Can we still reach it?" Kai checked the navigation systems. "If we leave now and push the engines to maximum, yes, but it will be close." "Then let's go," Lyra said, finding new resolve despite her fatigue. "I didn't escape one prison to die in another." As Kai initiated the launch sequence, detaching the asteroid base from its stable orbit, Lyra gazed once more at Eloria through the viewport. The frozen planet gleamed in the distance, beautiful and terrible, a world of suffering disguised as progress, of slavery masquerading as necessity. She would return, she decided. Not today, perhaps not soon, but someday. And when she did, it wouldn't be as a fugitive, but as a liberator. The engines fired, pushing them away from Eloria and toward an uncertain future among the stars. As the ice moons grew larger in the viewport, Lyra allowed herself a moment of hope. They had evaded capture once. Perhaps, with luck and determination, they could do so again, and again, until they found allies, until they could fight back, until all those like her could feel the warmth of freedom. The ice moons of Eloria hung like pale ghosts in the viewport as Kai maneuvered their small vessel between them. These frozen satellites created the blind spot Jex had mentioned, a region where mineral deposits interfered with corporate scanning technology. For now, at least, they were hidden. "Patrol ships are conducting standard search patterns," Mira reported, her voice emanating from the console. "Current probability of detection, 17% and falling." Kai exhaled in relief, finally allowing himself to relax slightly. "We made it. For now." In the co-pilot seat, Lyra watched the moons drift past. Unlike Eloria's uniform ice fields, these satellites were jagged and varied, their surfaces carved by millennia of cosmic impacts. What happens now? She asked quietly. We continue to the outer colonies, Kai replied, checking the navigation systems. There's a settlement on Proxus 9 where we might find support. The colonists there have been resisting corporate expansion for years. Lyra nodded, though uncertainty lingered. The outer colonies were largely unknown to her, places mentioned in hushed whispers among the workers, symbolic of a freedom few ever experienced. And if they won't help us? Then we find someone who will, Kai said with more confidence than he likely felt. The corporation's practices violate at least a dozen Galactic Council regulations. We just need to get the evidence to the right people. Before Lyra could respond, the ship's proximity alarm blared. Kai's hands flew across the console, bringing up the external sensors. Incoming vessel, he announced, tension returning to his voice. Not corporate design, smaller, possibly a scavenger ship. Scavengers? Lyra repeated, unfamiliar with the term. Independent operators who salvage abandoned technology. Sometimes raid corporate shipments, Kai explained, already adjusting their course to avoid the approaching craft. Usually, they stick to the outer systems, but with the increased patrol activity, they might be taking advantage of the distraction. Too late. The scavenger vessel changed course to match theirs, clearly having spotted them despite their attempted evasion. They're hailing us, Mira reported. Kai hesitated, then nodded. Put them through. A grainy holographic image materialized above the console, a woman with weathered features and a cybernetic eye implant. She regarded them with calculated interest. Well, what have we here? Her voice was rough, suggesting years of exposure to harsh environments. A corporate runaway, by the look of your ship. Stealing company property? Engineer? Kai straightened in his seat. We're not looking for trouble, just passing through. The woman laughed. Nobody just passes through the ice moons. You're hiding from something or someone. Her cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on Lyra. Interesting companion you've got there. Not fully human, is she? Lyra stiffened but remained silent. The less the stranger knew about her, the better. What do you want? Kai asked bluntly. Direct. I like that. The woman's expression turned calculating. Information, for starters. Corporate patrols are swarming this system, making my job difficult. I want to know why. Kai and Lyra exchanged a glance. Revealing too much could be dangerous, but they needed allies, or at least to avoid making new enemies. They're looking for us, Kai admitted carefully. We have evidence of corporate practices that violate Galactic Council regulations. Whistleblowers, eh? The woman's interest visibly increased. Those are rare in corporate space. Most dissenters have convenient accidents before they can talk. Which is why we're trying to reach the outer colonies. Kai pressed. If you'll let us pass, we'll be on our way. The woman considered this, her cybernetic eye continuing its unsettling analysis. The outer colonies are a long journey from here, especially in that outdated vessel. You'll need supplies, fuel, and a better route than the one you're currently taking. Are you offering help? Lyra asked, speaking for the first time. I'm offering a trade, the woman corrected. My name is Dara. I command a network of scavengers operating throughout this sector. We have resources, information, and a significant dislike for the Light Extraction Corporation. What would you want in exchange? Kai asked warily. Dara smiled, revealing metal-enhanced teeth. Your evidence, for starters. The corporation has been encroaching on our territory for years. Information we can use against them has value. And after we share this information, Lyra pressed, then I might be persuaded to provide you with supplies, a faster ship, and safe passage to the outer colonies. Dara's cybernetic eye focused on Lyra with uncomfortable intensity. I'm particularly interested in learning more about you, hybrid. Your kind rarely leaves corporate facilities. The offer was tempting, but fraught with risk. This Dara and her scavengers were unknown quantities, potentially as dangerous as the corporation they were fleeing. We need to discuss this privately, Kai said finally. Dara nodded. Of course. My ship will dock with yours in 20 minutes. We can continue our conversation face to face. I find it builds trust. The hologram flickered out before they could object. I don't like this, Lyra said immediately. Her interest in me seems excessive. Agreed, Kai replied, already checking the ship's systems. But we're low on fuel, and our current course will take us dangerously close to corporate space. If she can provide a safer route, she could also be planning to capture us and sell us back to the corporation, Lyra pointed out. The reward for me must be substantial. A valid concern, Mira interjected. However, my analysis of her communication suggests genuine antipathy toward the corporation. Scavenger networks typically operate in direct opposition to corporate interests. Kai ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Lyra had come to recognize as a sign of his frustration. We don't have many options. Our fuel reserves will only take us as far as the outer system boundary, and we have no contacts there. Then we meet with her, Lyra decided, but cautiously, and I want a weapon. Kai raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. From a compartment beneath the console, he retrieved a small plasma pistol, similar to those carried by corporation security, but less powerful. It has 3 charges, he explained, demonstrating how to operate it. Point, press, and be prepared for the recoil. But Lyra, he looked at her seriously. Using this would be a last resort. Violence tends to create more problems than it solves. Lyra accepted the weapon, tucking it into her belt. I've spent my life being powerless. I won't go back to that. 20 minutes later, they felt the slight shudder as Dara's ship extended a docking tube to connect with theirs. The airlock cycled, and Dara stepped aboard, accompanied by 2 crew members, a tall, muscular man with extensive scarring, and a smaller individual whose species Lyra couldn't identify, their features obscured by an environmental suit. Welcome aboard, Kai said, maintaining a neutral tone. This is Lyra, and you've already met Mira, at least virtually. Dara nodded to each of them, her cybernetic eye whirring as it scanned the ship's interior. My associates, Brahm and Tix. They go where I go. Pleasantries dispensed with, they moved to the small common area adjacent to the cockpit. Dara declined Kai's offer of refreshments, getting straight to business. Let's be clear about our situation, she began. You're fugitives with valuable information and limited resources. I'm a businesswoman with an interest in weakening corporate influence in this sector. Our goals align, temporarily at least. That seems accurate, Kai acknowledged cautiously. Good. Then tell me what you know about the corporation's operations on Eloria that has them so desperate to find you. Kai glanced at Lyra, who gave a slight nod. They had agreed to share some information, enough to establish trust, but not everything. Not yet. The Light Extraction Corporation has been using genetically engineered hybrids for their mining operations, Kai explained. Workers designed to withstand the extreme conditions of Eloria's ice fields. This isn't news, Dara said dismissively. The corporation's use of synthetic labor is well known, if not widely advertised. What isn't known, Lyra interjected, is that when workers are exposed to raw light crystal, the corporation doesn't treat them, they harvest them. They extract the light energy that has contaminated the worker's body, killing them in the process. Dara's expression hardened, her organic eye narrowing. You witnessed this. I escaped when they were about to process my friend, Lyra confirmed. But there's more. The corporation has developed a new program, hybrid specifically designed to absorb and store light energy without fatal consequences. Living batteries, essentially. And you're one of these new hybrids, Dara stated, rather than asked. Her cybernetic eye focused on Lyra with renewed interest. Lyra nodded, uncomfortable under the scavenger's analytical gaze. That explains the unprecedented search effort, Dara mused. You're not just an escaped worker. You're proprietary technology worth billions. She leaned back, considering the implications. The corporation must be desperate to recover you before word reaches the Galactic Council. Energy harvesting from sentient beings violates multiple provisions of the Synthetic Rights Accord. Which is why we need to reach the outer colonies. Kai pressed. With Lyra's testimony and the data I've collected on the corporation's genetic program, we could force an investigation. Dara exchanged glances with her associates, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, she turned back to Kai and Lyra. I'll help you, she decided. But my assistance comes with conditions. First, you'll provide copies of all your evidence. The data on the hybrid program, harvesting operations, everything. And second? Lyra asked warily. Second, Dara said, her gaze fixed on Lyra. I want a demonstration of your abilities. If you can truly process light energy without degradation, that technology has significant value. Value my network could use against the corporation. Lyra tensed. I'm not a technology to be used. I'm a person. Of course you are, Dara agreed smoothly. But you're also someone with a unique ability that could change the balance of power in this sector. I simply want to understand what you're capable of. Before Lyra could respond, the ship's proximity alarm blared again, this time with greater urgency. Corporate patrol vessels, Mira announced. 3 of them, approaching rapidly from Sector 14. They've detected our position. Impossible, Kai muttered, rushing to the cockpit. The mineral deposits in the moons should have masked our signature. Dara followed, her expression grim. Unless someone told them exactly where to look. You think we were betrayed? Lyra asked. The implication clear. It seems likely, Dara confirmed. The question is, by whom? All eyes turned to the airlock where their ships were still connected. We need to separate, Kai said urgently. If we stay docked, neither vessel can maneuver effectively. Agreed, Dara said, already moving toward the airlock. Brahm, Tix, back to our ship. Prepare for immediate departure. To Kai and Lyra, she added, this discussion isn't over. If we survive this encounter, we'll continue our negotiation. As the scavengers retreated to their vessel, Kai initiated emergency separation procedures. The docking tube retracted with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and the 2 ships began to drift apart. Corporate vessels will be in weapons range in approximately 45 seconds, Mira reported. Options? Lyra asked, strapping herself into the co-pilot seat. Kai's hands flew across the controls. We can try to lose them in the gravitational field of the largest moon. The interference might give us enough cover to slip away. On the view screen, Dara's ship was already accelerating away, taking a different trajectory, deeper into the field of ice moons, rather than away from them. She's drawing some of them off, Kai noted with surprise. 2 patrol vessels are pursuing her. That still leaves one for us, Lyra pointed out, watching as the 3rd corporate ship adjusted course to maintain pursuit of their vessel. One we can handle, Kai said with more confidence than Lyra felt was warranted. Mira, divert all non-essential power to engines and shields. The ship surged forward, racing toward the largest of Aeloria's moons, a desolate sphere of ice and rock, nearly a quarter the size of the planet itself. Behind them, the corporate patrol vessel followed, gaining steadily. They're charging weapons, Mira warned. Evasive pattern Delta, Kai ordered, sending the ship into a series of unpredictable maneuvers. Lyra, there's a manual fire control station behind you. It's not much, but it might help slow them down. Lyra unstrapped from her seat and moved to the indicated console. The fire control system was basic, a targeting display and firing mechanism for the ship's single defensive cannon. Not enough to destroy a corporate patrol vessel, but perhaps enough to damage its sensors or weapon systems. As she familiarized herself with the controls, the ship rocked violently, a glancing hit from the patrol vessel's forward cannons. "Shields at 73%, Mira reported calmly. "Minor damage to port stabilizers." Lyra targeted the pursuing ship and fired, watching as energy pulses streaked across the void. Most missed, but one connected with the patrol vessel's forward section, causing a small explosion that temporarily disrupted its course. "Good shot," Kai called, using the momentary advantage to increase their lead. "We're approaching the moon's gravitational field. Prepare for turbulence." The ship shuddered as they crossed the invisible boundary, where the moon's gravity began to exert significant influence. Kai adjusted their trajectory, skimming close to the surface where jagged ice formations rose like frozen waves. The patrol vessel followed, more cautious now, but still determined. Another volley of energy fire streaked past them, one bolt striking a nearby ice formation and causing it to explode into crystalline fragments. "They're hurting us," Kai realized suddenly, his expression darkening. "This pursuit is too precise. They're driving us towards something." Before he could elaborate, the ship's sensors detected a new threat, a second patrol vessel appearing from behind the moon's curve, directly in their path. "Trap," Lyra breathed, understanding dawning. The betrayal wasn't about finding us. It was about ensuring we had nowhere to go. Kai's hands gripped the controls tightly. "Mira, full power to forward shields. We're going to try to break through." "Probability of success, 27%. The AI responded, her usual calm tinged with concern. "The second vessel is larger, a cruiser-class ship. Our weapons will have minimal effect on its defenses." As the cruiser loomed larger in their viewport, Lyra made a decision. Moving back to the co-pilot's seat, she placed her hand on Kai's arm. "There's another way," she said quietly. "My abilities. If I can affect a patrol ship's systems from a distance, perhaps I can do more with direct contact." Kai looked at her in alarm. "You want to board the cruiser? That's suicide. Lyra." "Not board it," she clarified. "Just connect with it. The same way I connected with the asteroid's hull. If they capture us, we lose everything. But if I can disrupt their systems long enough for us to slip past..." "The strain could kill you," Kai argued. "You've only used your abilities once, and you were exhausted afterward." "It's our only chance," Lyra insisted. "Get me as close as you can to the cruiser, then be ready to fly us out of here the moment their systems fail." Kai held her gaze for a long moment, conflict evident in his expression. Finally, he nodded. "All right. But at the first sign that you're in danger, we abort." Lyra agreed, though they both knew the stakes allowed for little caution. As Kai adjusted their course to bring them closer to the approaching cruiser, Lyra prepared herself mentally for what was to come. The process would be similar to what she had done before, but on a much larger scale. She would need to channel energy, not just through her hands, but through her entire being, to become a conduit between the power within her and the cruiser's systems. "They're hailing us," Mira announced. "Corporate cruiser implacable, demanding immediate surrender." "Ignore it," Kai instructed. "Maintain course." The cruiser grew larger in their viewport, a massive vessel bristling with weapons and scanning arrays. On their tail, the patrol ship continued its pursuit, effectively blocking any retreat. "Range to cruiser, 500 meters and closing," Mira reported. "They are deploying capture nets." "Close enough," Lyra decided. "Kai, hold us steady." Standing from her seat, Lyra moved to the viewport, placing both palms against the transparent material. Beyond it, the cruiser's hull loomed, dark and imposing against the backdrop of stars. Closing her eyes, Lyra focused inward, finding the reservoir of energy that resided within her cells. It responded more readily this time, as if awakened by her previous use. Light began to emanate from her skin, bathing the cockpit in a soft blue glow. "Lyra!" Kai's voice seemed distant, concerned. "I'm all right," she assured him, though the strain was already building. "Just be ready to move." Gathering the energy, Lyra projected it outward, not in a focused beam, but as a wave, expanding from her body and through the ship's hull. The light traveled across the diminishing space between their vessel and the cruiser, invisible to normal sight, but potent in its effect. When it reached the cruiser, Lyra felt the connection form, a bridge of energy linking her to the larger ship's systems. Through this connection, she could sense the cruiser's power grid, its weapons arrays, the very pulse of its engines. Focusing her will, she sent a surge of disruptive energy through the connection, targeting the cruiser's primary systems. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The cruiser's lights flickered and died. Its engines sputtered and failed. The capture nets, half deployed, went limp in space. "Now, Kai!" Lyra gasped, the strain threatening to overwhelm her. Kai didn't hesitate. With the cruiser temporarily disabled, he guided their ship into a steep dive, skimming beneath the massive vessel and using its bulk to shield them from the pursuing patrol ship. The maneuver worked. By the time the patrol ship adjusted course to follow, they had gained precious distance, accelerating away from the moon's gravitational field and toward open space. Lyra collapsed into her seat, the glow fading from her skin. The effort had drained her more thoroughly than before, leaving her weak and shaking. But they were alive, and free, for the moment. "Patrol ship is still in pursuit," Mira reported. "But we've increased our lead. The cruiser remains disabled." "Good work," Kai said, sparing a glance at Lyra. His expression shifted from triumph to concern as he noted her condition. "Lyra, talk to me." "I'm here," she managed, though her voice was faint. "Just tired. Very tired." Kai nodded, understanding. "Rest. I'll get us somewhere safe." As Lyra drifted toward unconsciousness, she wondered vaguely what safe meant in a universe where both corporations and scavengers saw her as a resource to be exploited. Perhaps nowhere was truly safe for someone like her, someone created to be used. Her last thought before darkness claimed her was of warmth, not the physical warmth she had craved since escaping Eloria's ice fields, but something deeper, the warmth of connection, of purpose, of fighting for something larger than herself. It wasn't freedom, not yet, but it was a beginning. The ice fields of Eloria stretched before Lyra, vast and unforgiving. She stood at the edge of a great crevasse, the gulf between her and freedom yawning wide. Behind her, the relentless march of hunter drones approached, their mechanical limbs cutting through snow with terrible precision. At the far side of the crevasse stood Kai, hand outstretched, calling to her. She had to jump, had to trust that she could make it across. But her legs refused to move, frozen in place as surely as the ice beneath her feet. "Lyra!" Kai's voice seemed distant, distorted. "Lyra, wake up!" The dream dissolved, reality rushing in to replace it. Lyra opened her eyes to find Kai leaning over her, concern etched on his features. "There you are," he said, relief evident in his voice. "You've been unconscious for nearly 12 hours. I was starting to worry." Lyra struggled to sit up, finding herself in an unfamiliar bed, in an equally unfamiliar room. The walls were rough-hewn stone, and the air carried a mineral scent she couldn't place. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Mining Outpost K-12, Kai replied, helping her to a sitting position. "One of the corporation's abandoned operations near the outer system boundary. I thought we might find supplies here, and it was the only place I could reach with our remaining fuel." "Abandoned? Why?" Kai gestured toward a small viewport. Outside, a desolate landscape of rock and dust stretched to the horizon, broken only by the skeletal remains of mining equipment. "Resources depleted," he explained. "The corporation extracted everything of value and moved on. That was 5 years ago, according to the station logs." Lyra swung her legs over the edge of the bed, testing her strength. The weakness remained, but it was less overwhelming than before. Her body was recovering, adapting perhaps to the use of her abilities. "The patrol ship?" she asked. "Lost it in an asteroid field 3 hours after you disabled the cruiser," Kai assured her. "We should be safe here, at least temporarily. The outpost's power signature is minimal, and its location is remote enough that routine patrols rarely venture this far." He offered her a container of water, which she accepted gratefully. As she drank, Kai continued his explanation. "I've been exploring while you recovered. The outpost is in surprisingly good condition. Life support systems functional, basic amenities intact. Even found some emergency rations in the storage bays. Not delicious, but edible." "And Mira?" Lyra asked, suddenly realizing the AI hadn't spoken since she awoke. "I transferred her core programming to the outpost systems," Kai said. "She's integrating with the facility, gaining access to whatever data remains in the corporation archives here. It's slow going. A lot of the files were corrupted or deleted during the evacuation, but she's making progress." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Mira's voice emanated from a wall speaker. "Welcome back to consciousness. Lyra, your vital signs are stabilizing, though you'll need additional rest to fully recover." "Thanks, Mira," Lyra replied, managing a small smile. "Find anything useful in the archives?" "Potentially," the AI responded. "I've discovered references to something called the Lumina Protocol, apparently a corporation initiative related to energy harvesting from hybrid subjects. Most of the specific data is encrypted or damaged, but I'm continuing to search." Kai's expression grew serious. "The Lumina Protocol might be connected to what Admiral Veros called the Luminous Project, the program for which you were created." "If we could access those files," Lyra mused, "we might find information that would help the other hybrids, maybe even a way to disable the tracking systems the corporation uses to control them." "My thoughts exactly," Kai agreed. "Mira's working on decryption, but it could take time. In the meantime, we need to consider our next move. The outpost has supplies, but they won't last forever." Lyra nodded, thinking through their options. "The outer colonies are still our best hope, but we've lost our chance at help from the scavengers." "Actually," Kai said, looking slightly embarrassed, "about that. While you were unconscious, we received a transmission from Dara." Lyra stiffened. "The scavenger? She found us?" "Not exactly. The message was broadcast on an emergency frequency, a general distress call. Her ship was damaged in the encounter with the patrol vessels, and they're stranded on one of Eloria's ice moons. The same one where we almost got caught." "And you think we should help them," Lyra concluded, reading his expression, "after they potentially betrayed us to the corporation?" Kai ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of frustration. "We don't know for certain they betrayed us, and even if they did, leaving them stranded means leaving potential allies in corporation hands. If the patrol ships find them..." He didn't need to finish the thought. If captured, the scavengers would be interrogated, their knowledge of Lyra and Kai extracted by whatever means necessary, and then they would be disposed of, like all who defied corporate interests. "You want to rescue them," Lyra said flatly. "Go back into corporation-controlled space, risking everything we've gained." "I want to consider all our options," Kai corrected gently, "including the possibility that having Dara and her crew as allies might be worth the risk." Lyra rose from the bed, moving to the viewport. The desolate landscape outside reflected her inner conflict. Barren, exposed, with nowhere to hide. They had escaped immediate danger, but their situation remained precarious. Two fugitives in an abandoned outpost, with limited supplies and fewer options. "There's something else you should know," Kai added, his tone suggesting he had saved the most significant news for last. "Mira found a reference to a technology developed here at Outpost K-12. Something called the warming net. Lyra turned from the viewport, interest piqued despite her wariness. Warming net? It was an experimental climate control system, Kai explained, growing animated as he often did when discussing technology. Designed to convert ice into thermal energy on a massive scale. The corporation abandoned it when they depleted the mineral resources here. But the prototype still exists somewhere in the outpost. Why would that matter to us? Lyra asked, not seeing the connection. Because, Kai said, a spark of excitement in his eyes. If we could locate and reactivate the warming net, we might have leverage, a bargaining chip valuable enough to secure our safe passage to the outer colonies. Or a weapon, Lyra suggested, the implications dawning on her. Something that could be used against the ice fields of Aloria, against the corporation's primary source of light crystal. Kai nodded slowly. I hadn't thought of it that way. But yes, in the wrong hands, the technology could be devastating. In the right hands, it could free my people, Lyra finished. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. Freedom through destruction? Was that justice, or merely vengeance? I need to think, she said finally. About the warming net, about Dara, about all of it. Can you show me more of the outpost? I need to move, to clear my head. Of course, Kai agreed, understanding in his eyes. Just don't overexert yourself. Your body is still recovering. As they left the small medical bay, where Lyra had awakened, Kai guided her through the abandoned corridors of Outpost K-12. The facility was larger than she had expected, a sprawling complex carved into the rocky surface of a nameless planetoid. Evidence of the corporation's hasty departure was everywhere. Discarded equipment, half-emptied storage containers, personal items left behind in crew quarters. How many people lived here? Lyra asked, surveying the empty communal area that had once served as a mess hall. According to the records Mira found, about 200 at peak operation, Kai replied. Mostly engineers and technical staff, with a small security contingent. No hybrids. Interestingly enough, this facility predates the Eldari breeding program. They continued their tour, passing through laboratories and workshop spaces. In one, Kai showed her the projects he had begun during her unconsciousness. Repairs to their ship's damaged systems, modifications to the outpost's communication array, even experiments with some of the technology left behind by the corporation. This is where I've been focusing my search for the warming net prototype, he explained, leading her into a large chamber, dominated by complex machinery. These components match partial schematics Mira found in the archives. If I can understand the underlying principles. Lyra only half listened as Kai launched into a technical explanation of energy conversion and thermal dynamics. Her attention had been caught by something else, a subtle vibration beneath her feet, a rhythm that seemed almost familiar. Kai, she interrupted, do you feel that? He paused, looking confused. Feel what? A vibration. Through the floor. Lyra knelt, placing her palm against the metal plating. It's faint, but constant, like a heartbeat. Kai joined her, pressing his hand to the floor. After a moment, his expression changed from skepticism to surprise. You're right. There's something. But the outpost's primary generators are 3 levels below us, and they shouldn't create this kind of resonance pattern. It's not mechanical, Lyra said with sudden certainty. It's energy, light energy, like what flows through me. I can sense it. They exchanged a look of shared realization. The warming net, Kai breathed. It's not dormant after all. Following the vibrations led them deeper into the outpost, through maintenance tunnels and storage areas long abandoned. The pulse grew stronger as they descended, until finally they reached a sealed door marked with corporation security warnings. This wasn't in any of the schematics Mira shared with me, Kai said, examining the door's locking mechanism. It's a high-security containment chamber. Can you open it? Lyra asked, the vibration now so strong she could feel it resonating within her own body, calling to the energy she carried. Kai studied the lock. Maybe. It's an older model, and the power systems have degraded over time. If I can bypass the main circuit. He worked methodically, using tools from his belt to manipulate the lock's internal components. After several tense minutes, there was a satisfying click, followed by the groan of long, unused hydraulics as the door began to slide open. Light spilled from the chamber beyond, not the harsh illumination of artificial lighting, but a soft, pulsing blue glow that reminded Lyra of the ice fields of Eloria when sunlight struck them at just the right angle. Inside was a circular room, dominated by a central column that reached from floor to ceiling. Within the column, visible through transparent panels, flowed what appeared to be liquid light, a cascade of luminous energy that shifted and swirled in hypnotic patterns. "It's beautiful," Lyra whispered, drawn toward the column as if by some magnetic pull. "Careful," Kai cautioned, following close behind. "We don't know exactly what we're dealing with." Around the central column were workstations, their displays still active despite years of abandonment. Kai moved to the nearest one, quickly scanning the information displayed. "This is it," he confirmed, excitement bleeding into his voice. "The warming net prototype, or rather, its power source. The actual distribution network was never completed." "What is it exactly?" Lyra asked, unable to take her eyes from the flowing light. "According to this," Kai said, reading from the display, "it's a light energy converter. It takes raw crystal energy, the same kind the corporation mines from Eloria's ice, and transforms it into thermal energy. Essentially, it turns light into heat on a massive scale." Lyra finally tore her gaze from the column to look at Kai. "And this could be used to warm Eloria? To melt the ice fields?" "Theoretically, yes," Kai admitted, "though the environmental consequences would be catastrophic without proper control systems. The original design included safeguards to prevent runaway thermal reactions. But even so, it could end the mining operations," Lyra said softly. "Free my people." "Or kill everyone on the planet," Kai countered, concern evident in his expression. "Lyra, this technology is powerful but dangerous, if misused." Whatever warning he intended was cut short as the outpost's alert system suddenly blared to life, red emergency lights bathing the chamber in an ominous glow. "Proximity alert," Mira's voice announced through the outpost's communication system. "Corporate vessel approaching on direct intercept course. Estimated time to arrival, 17 minutes. "They found us," Lyra breathed, fear and resignation warring within her. "But how?" Kai was already moving toward the exit. "Questions later. We need to prepare for evacuation, if we can reach the ship before they land." "The ship isn't ready," Lyra reminded him. "You said yourself the repairs weren't complete." "Then we hide," Kai decided. "The outpost has maintenance shafts, emergency shelters. If we can avoid detection long enough for them to complete their search and leave—" But Lyra wasn't listening. Her attention had returned to the column of flowing light, the energy calling to her on some primal level. An idea was forming. Dangerous, perhaps foolish, but potentially their only chance. "Kai," she interrupted, her decision made, "I need you to tell me everything you know about how this converter works. Right now." He looked at her in confusion. Then understanding dawned. "You want to use it? Lyra, we don't have time to study the operation protocols. And the risks." "Not use it as designed," she clarified. "Connect with it. The way I connected with the asteroid's hull, with the cruiser systems. But I need to understand what I'm dealing with first." Kai hesitated, clearly torn between the immediate need to evacuate and Lyra's request. Finally, he returned to the workstation, fingers flying across the controls. "The converter works by creating a resonance field between light energy particles," he explained rapidly. It excites the particles, causing them to release thermal energy instead of light. The process is controlled by these electromagnetic regulators. He pointed to components around the base of the column, which prevent cascade reactions. And if those regulators were deactivated? Lyra asked. The reaction would accelerate exponentially, Kai replied grimly, eventually resulting in a massive release of thermal energy, essentially an explosion. Lyra nodded, the pieces falling into place. Can you configure the converter to create a controlled energy surge? Something significant enough to disrupt their sensors, but not catastrophic. Kai's expression was dubious. Theoretically, yes, but the margin for error would be minuscule. Too little power, and it won't affect their systems. Too much. I understand the risk, Lyra assured him, but I also understand what I'm capable of. The energy in this converter resonates with what's inside me. I can feel it. If I can channel it, direct it. You'd be putting yourself in extreme danger, Kai argued. The amount of energy flowing through that column would overwhelm your body's ability to process it. Maybe, Lyra conceded. Or maybe this is exactly what I was created for. Why my genetic code was designed to stabilize light energy. Before Kai could protest further, Mira's voice interrupted. Corporate vessel has increased speed. Estimated arrival now in 14 minutes. They are broadcasting security protocols consistent with a capture mission. Time was running out. Lyra placed her hand on Kai's arm, meeting his gaze with determination. I need you to trust me. Help me connect with the converter. Then get to the ship and prepare for emergency launch. If this works, I'll join you. If not, that's not an option, Kai said firmly. We leave together or not at all. Lyra appreciated his loyalty, but knew sentiment couldn't dictate their actions now. The evidence we have about the corporation, about what they're doing to the hybrids, it has to reach the outer colonies. One of us needs to make sure that happens. Kai held her gaze for a long moment, conflict evident in his expression. Finally, he nodded, his jaw tight. What do you need me to do? Lower the electromagnetic regulators to minimum safe levels, Lyra instructed. I need access to as much of the raw energy as possible, without triggering a cascade reaction. Then leave. Get to the ship and be ready to depart the moment I give the signal. As Kai reluctantly moved to the control console, Lyra approached the central column. The light within pulsed stronger now, as if responding to her proximity. She placed her palms against the transparent barrier, feeling the energy thrum beneath her touch. Regulators at minimum safe levels, Kai announced. Converter energy output increasing by 23%. He hesitated, then added, Lyra, if you feel anything wrong, any sign that the energy is overwhelming you, disengage immediately. Promise me. I promise, she said, though they both knew it might be a promise she couldn't keep. Now go. Prepare the ship. With a final concerned glance, Kai left the chamber, the door sliding shut behind him. Lyra was alone with the converter, its light casting blue-white patterns across her skin. Closing her eyes, she focused inward, finding the familiar reservoir of energy within her cells. It responded eagerly, as if recognizing a kindred force in the converter's light. Taking a deep breath, Lyra pressed her palms more firmly against the barrier and opened herself to the energy beyond. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming, a rush of power, unlike anything she had experienced before. The converter's energy flooded into her, not just through her hands but seemingly through every pore of her body. Her skin began to glow, first softly, then with increasing brightness until she herself became a beacon of blue-white light. Through the connection, Lyra could sense the entire outpost, its systems, its structure, even the approaching corporate vessel. She extended her awareness outward, feeling the ship's engines, its navigation systems, the very thoughts of its crew focused on the capture mission ahead. With effort, she gathered the converter's energy and her own, combining them into a concentrated surge. The strain was immense, threatening to tear her apart at a cellular level. Her vision blurred, replaced by patterns of pure light. Just as the pain became unbearable, Lyra released the energy, not in all directions, but in a focused beam directed at the approaching vessel. The surge traveled faster than thought, crossing the void between the outpost and the ship in an instant. The effect was beyond her expectations. The corporate vessel's systems failed catastrophically. Engines, weapons, life support, all overloaded by the sudden influx of energy. Through her extended awareness, Lyra felt the crew's panic, their desperate attempts to regain control as the ship began to tumble helplessly through space. But the energy release had consequences for the converter as well. The regulators, already at minimum levels, couldn't contain the feedback surge. Warning alarms blared as the column of light began to pulse erratically, the liquid energy inside boiling with increasing volatility. "Converter stability compromised," Mira's voice announced through the outpost systems. "Cascade reaction imminent. Evacuation protocols initiated." Lyra tried to disengage from the connection, to pull her consciousness back into her body, but the energy flow had become self-sustaining. She was caught in a loop, power cycling between her and the converter in an accelerating pattern. Through her expanded awareness, she sensed Kai's presence, not physically beside her, but moving through the outpost toward the ship. He was following her instructions, preparing for departure, even as the converter approached critical instability. She had to break the connection, had to escape before the cascade reaction reached its inevitable conclusion. With tremendous effort, Lyra focused her will on a single thought: release. The energy binding her to the converter resisted, clinging to the perfect conduit she provided. Lyra pushed harder, drawing on reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. Fractures appeared in the connection, small at first, then widening as she continued to press against them. With a final, desperate surge of will, Lyra broke free. The backlash sent her flying across the chamber, crashing into the far wall with bone-jarring force. The converter column was pulsing rapidly now, the light within no longer blue-white, but an angry red that bathed the chamber in blood-colored illumination. Staggering to her feet, Lyra stumbled toward the exit. The door, which had closed behind Kai, refused to open, safety protocols engaged due to the impending reaction. Through a small viewport in the door, she could see the corridor beyond, her path to freedom and to Kai. Desperation gave her strength, focusing the residual energy still coursing through her body. Lyra directed it at the door mechanism. The lock sizzled and sparked, then gave way with a reluctant groan. The door slid open just enough for her to squeeze through. The corridor stretched before her, emergency lights flashing in urgent warning. Lyra ran, each step carrying her further from the converter and closer to escape. Behind her, she could feel the cascade reaction building toward its climax, a wave of energy that would soon consume the entire outpost. "Kai!" she gasped into her communicator as she ran. "Where are you?" His response came immediately, tense with concern. "Docking bay. The ship is ready. Where are you?" "On my way," she managed between labored breaths. "The converter is going critical. We need to leave, now." "I'm not leaving without you," he replied, the connection crackling with interference as the outpost systems began to fail. "Hurry, Lyra!" She pushed herself harder, ignoring the pain that racked her body. The docking bay was 3 levels up and 2 sections over, a journey that would normally take minutes, but now had to be completed in seconds. As she rounded a corner, a figure stepped into her path, tall, imposing, dressed in the gray uniform of corporation security. For a moment, Lyra thought it was Jex, returned to either help or hinder. But as the figure raised its head, she saw the cold, calculating eyes and scarred face of Admiral Veros himself. Unit 7219, he said, his voice as emotionless as his expression. Your escape ends here. Lyra skidded to a halt, terror momentarily freezing her in place. Vero stood between her and the access shaft that would lead to the docking bay, between her and freedom. How did you, she began. Find you? Veros finished, a smile without warmth stretching his thin lips. Your friend Jex was most helpful, once proper persuasion was applied. He lasted longer than most under interrogation. I'll give him that. Grief and anger surged through Lyra at the implication Jex, who had helped them despite his corporation loyalties, had paid the ultimate price for that choice. The ship you disabled was merely a scout, Veros continued, taking a step toward her. Did you really think we would commit significant resources without confirmation of your location? Now that we have you, the real work can begin. Behind her, Lyra could feel the converter's instability growing. They had minutes, perhaps less, before the cascade reaction reached critical mass. There's no time, she urged, desperation making her voice raw. This entire outpost is about to be destroyed. We need to evacuate. Varos waved a dismissive hand. A convenient lie, but ineffective. The corporation built these facilities to withstand significant stress. Whatever you've done to the systems, it can be contained. He was wrong, fatally so, but Lyra saw no way to convince him, and every second spent trying was a second closer to destruction. Making a split-second decision, she gathered the last remnants of energy within her and unleashed it in a blinding flash, not at Veros directly, but at the ceiling above him. The metal groaned, then collapsed in a shower of debris, forcing the Admiral to dive for cover. Lyra didn't wait to see the result. She sprinted past the obstruction, hearing Veros's enraged shout behind her as he realized her ploy. A plasma bolt sizzled past her head, impacting the wall with a shower of sparks. The access shaft loomed ahead, a vertical tube with a ladder leading upward toward the docking bay. Lyra practically threw herself onto the rungs, climbing with desperate speed as more plasma bolts flew around her. Kai, she shouted into her communicator. I'm in the access shaft. Veros is here. He's firing at me. Hang on, came Kai's response, determination evident even through the static. I'm coming to help. No, Lyra countered, still climbing. Stay with the ship. I'm almost there. Below, she could hear Veros entering the shaft, his methodical movements suggesting confidence rather than hurry. He knew the outpost was doomed, knew their time was running out, yet moved with the calculated precision of a predator certain of its prey. The ship bay was just ahead. Lyra could see the open hatch at the top of the shaft, light spilling down from the level above. With a final surge of effort, she pulled herself up and over the edge, collapsing onto the docking bay floor. Their ship stood ready, engines humming with pre-launch energy. Kai stood in the open airlock, plasma pistol in hand, scanning the bay for threats. When he saw Lyra, relief washed over his features. Come on, he shouted, gesturing urgently. We've got maybe 2 minutes before this place goes up. Lyra staggered to her feet, crossing the distance to the ship on shaking legs. Behind her, she heard Veros emerging from the access shaft, his voice cold with command. Stop where you are, Unit 7219, that's an order. She kept moving, Kai's outstretched hand her focus and goal. Veros fired, the plasma bolt passing so close to her head that she felt its heat against her cheek. The next one won't miss, the Admiral warned. Your programming includes obedience protocols. Access code Lumina 793. Comply. Something stirred within Lyra at the words, a compulsion buried deep in her genetic coding. Her steps faltered as competing imperatives warred within her mind, the order to obey versus her desperate need for freedom. Lyra, Kai called, his voice seeming to come from a great distance. Don't listen to him. You're stronger than their programming. She focused on Kai's voice, on the promise of escape it represented. One step, then another. The compulsion pulled at her, but she pushed through it, each step a victory of will over design. Varos swore, abandoning the control codes for more direct action. He fired again, but his aim was disrupted as the outpost shuddered, the first visible sign of the converter's impending detonation. The shot went wide, striking a fuel line near the ceiling. Fire erupted instantly, spreading across the bay with frightening speed. Kai ducked inside the ship to avoid the flames, while Varos was momentarily caught behind a wall of fire. It was the opportunity Lyra needed. She sprinted the remaining distance to the ship, Kai's hand closing around hers as she reached the airlock. He pulled her inside, already hitting the control to seal the door behind them. "Mira!" he shouted. "Launch sequence, now!" The AI, transferred back to the ship's systems, responded immediately. Engines roared to full power as the docking clamps released, the ship lifting free of the outpost's gravitational tethers. Through the viewport, Lyra caught a final glimpse of Varos, the Admiral standing amidst the flames, face contorted with rage as his prize escaped. Then the ship rotated, and he was lost from view as they accelerated away from the doomed outpost. "Converter cascade reaction has reached critical threshold," Mira announced calmly. "Detonation imminent." "Maximum thrust," Kai ordered, strapping himself into the pilot's seat. "We need distance." The ship surged forward, straining against the forces pulling it back. Behind them, the outpost began to glow, not with fire, but with light, bleeding through every seam and viewport as the converter's energy sought release. "Brace for impact," Mira warned, just moments before the outpost detonated. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, but its effects were immediate and violent. A shockwave of energy slammed into their ship, sending it tumbling end over end despite Kai's desperate attempts to maintain control. Warning alarms blared as systems overloaded and failed. The cabin lights flickered, then died, leaving them in darkness punctuated only by the glow of emergency lighting. "Engine failure," Mira reported, her voice distorted by fluctuating power. "Navigation offline. Hull integrity at 62% and falling. Reroute emergency power to life support and shields," Kai instructed, his hands flying over the controls. "Can we stabilize our trajectory?" "Negative," the AI responded. "Current course will take us into the gravitational field of the nearest planetary body in approximately 17 minutes. "Which planetary body?" Lyra asked, a horrible suspicion forming. "Aloria," Mira confirmed. "We are on a direct collision course with the northern ice fields." The irony was not lost on Lyra. To have escaped the corporation, only to be pulled back to the very place from which she had fled. It seemed a cruel twist of fate. But, as she considered their situation more carefully, an alternative perspective emerged. "The northern fields," she repeated thoughtfully. "That's where the primary mining operations are located, where most of the hybrids are kept." Kai glanced at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You're thinking this isn't a disaster, but an opportunity." "The converter's energy," Lyra explained, the plan forming as she spoke. "It didn't just destroy the outpost. It transformed. I felt it during the explosion. The light converted to heat, just as it was designed to do. And our ship is now carrying that energy with us," Kai continued, following her reasoning. "Like a delivery system." "If we can control our descent," Lyra said, excitement building despite their perilous situation, "we could release that energy directly into the ice fields. Not enough to catastrophically melt them, but enough to disrupt the mining operations. Enough to create chaos that might allow the hybrids to escape. A liberation rather than a crash landing," Kai mused, a smile slowly spreading across his face. "Mira, can you analyze the energy signature currently affecting our ship?" "Affirmative," the AI responded after a moment's processing. "The hull is saturated with transformed converter energy, approximately 67% thermal in nature, the remainder still in light form. And if we were to channel that energy through the ship's remaining systems, Kai pressed, could we create a controlled release upon impact? Mira's pause was longer this time. Theoretically possible. It would require reconfiguring the shield generators to act as energy conduits rather than barriers. Success probability, 34%. I can improve those odds, Lyra said with quiet confidence. If I can connect with the ship's systems the way I connected with the converter, I can direct the energy release. Kai looked at her with concern. You're still recovering from the last time you channeled that much power. The strain could kill you. It's worth the risk, Lyra insisted. For my people. For all the hybrids still trapped in the corporation's grip. Before Kai could argue further, a new alert sounded from the console. Incoming transmission, Mira announced. Origin, corporate patrol vessel. They recovered quickly, Kai muttered. Put it through, audio only. Let's hear what they have to say. The cabin filled with a familiar voice. Not Veros this time, but Dara, the scavenger they had encountered near the ice moons. No, repeat. This is Dara of the independent vessel Nomad calling unidentified ship on collision course with Aloria. If you can hear this, respond. Kai and Lyra exchanged surprised glances. Dara, Kai responded cautiously. This is Kai. How did you… No time for explanations, Dara cut in. Urgency evident in her tone. We tracked the energy signature from the outpost explosion. Corporation forces are mobilizing. They know you're headed for the ice fields. We're aware, Kai replied. Our systems are damaged. We can't alter course. We can help, Dara offered. My ship survived the encounter with the patrol vessels. We can attempt a rescue before you enter Aloria's atmosphere. Lyra leaned forward, suspicion warring with hope. Why would you help us? Last time we met, we were nearly captured. That wasn't our doing, Dara insisted. After you left, we discovered a tracking device in Tix's environmental suit, corporation technology. They used us to find you. It was plausible, but trust came hard after so much betrayal. And now, Lyra pressed. Now we have a common enemy, Dara replied simply. The corporation's patrols damaged my ship and killed one of my crew. I want payback. And from what I've heard about your hybrid friend's abilities, you might be the key to getting it. Kai muted the transmission temporarily, turning to Lyra. What do you think? Can we trust her? Lyra considered the question carefully. I don't know. But what choice do we have? Our current plan has a 34% chance of success. If Dara can improve those odds. Or she could be leading us into another trap, Kai pointed out. True, Lyra acknowledged. But why bother with a trap when we're already on a collision course with Aloria? If the corporation wanted us captured, they could simply wait at the impact site. Kai nodded slowly, seeing the logic in her argument. He unmuted the transmission. What exactly are you proposing, Dara? A rendezvous, the scavenger replied promptly. We intercept your vessel before you enter Aloria's gravity well. Transfer you to our ship. Then we proceed with whatever plan you were formulating, with better resources and a functioning vessel. And in return, Kai asked, always the pragmatist. A share in whatever we achieve together, Dara said. And access to the technology your hybrid carries within her. Not to exploit, she added quickly, perhaps sensing Lyra's immediate resistance. But to understand. Knowledge is currency in the scavenger networks. It was a deal with uncertain terms, offered by an ally of questionable loyalty. But as Mira displayed their rapidly deteriorating trajectory toward Aloria, the decision became clearer. We accept, Kai said finally. Transmitting our current coordinates and velocity. Estimate time to intercept? 12 minutes, Dara responded. Cutting it close, but doable. Prepare for emergency transfer procedures. Nomad out. As the transmission ended, Kai turned to Lyra. Still think this is a good idea? No, she admitted with a small smile. But it's better than the alternative. Kai laughed. A brief release of tension in the face of their dire circumstances. Fair point. Mira, what's our status? Hull integrity continuing to decline. The AI reported. Currently at 57%. Estimate complete structural failure in approximately 26 minutes. Just enough time for Dara to rescue us, or for everything to go horribly wrong. Kai observed dryly. Let's prepare for the transfer. And Lyra. He caught her gaze, his expression serious. Whatever happens, we stick together. No self-sacrificing heroics from either of us. Agreed. Lyra nodded, though in truth, she couldn't make such a promise with absolute certainty. If it came down to a choice between her freedom and the liberation of her people, she knew which she would choose. True to her word, Dara's ship appeared 11 minutes later, a sleek vessel of clearly modified design, bearing the scars of recent combat, but moving with precision as it maneuvered alongside their damaged craft. Initiating docking procedure, Dara's voice announced over the comm system. Stand by for pressure equalization. Kai and Lyra moved to the airlock, gathering what few possessions they had. The data storage devices containing evidence of the corporation's crimes, some basic supplies, and the plasma pistol Kai had given Lyra, now with only one charge remaining. The transfer was more chaotic than planned. As the two ships connected, a new shockwave from the continuing reactor breakdown at the outpost struck them, causing the docking seal to partially fail. Air rushed through the imperfect connection, creating a howling vortex that threatened to pull them into the void. Dara's crew, the scarred man Brahm and the environmental-suited Tix, secured lines to themselves and threw the ends across the gap. Kai caught one, securing it around his waist before tossing the other to Lyra. Go first, he shouted over the roar of escaping air. I'll follow. Lyra hesitated, unwilling to leave him behind, but Kai's expression brooked no argument. She secured the line and pushed off, letting the escaping air current carry her across the gap between ships. Brahm caught her on the other side, his strong hands steadying her as she found her footing on the Nomad's deck. Turning back, she watched as Kai prepared to make the same jump. But in that moment, another shockwave hit, more violent than the first. The docking connection failed completely, the two ships suddenly separating with alarming speed. Kai! Lyra screamed, lunging forward only to be restrained by Brahm. Through the rapidly widening gap, she saw Kai still standing in their ship's airlock. The line that should have carried him to safety, drifting uselessly in the vacuum between vessels. Get her out of here, he shouted, his voice barely audible through the failing communication system. I'll follow in the escape pod. Before Lyra could protest, the gap became too wide for communication. The last she saw of Kai was his figure disappearing back into the damaged ship, presumably heading for the single-occupant escape pod housed in the vessel's lower section. We have to go back, Lyra demanded, struggling against Brahm's restraining grip. We can't leave him. We can't dock again, Dara said, appearing beside them as the airlock sealed. That last shockwave damaged our docking mechanisms. If we try to reconnect, we'll lose both ships. Then we follow the escape pod, Lyra insisted. Once he launches... If he launches, Dara corrected grimly. That ship is breaking apart. The structural integrity won't last much longer. As if to confirm her assessment, visible cracks appeared along the hull of their former vessel, energy from the converter explosion leaking through in streams of blue-white light. Track the escape pod, Dara ordered Tix, who moved immediately to a sensor console. If he manages to launch, we'll follow. But we can't stay here much longer. The next shockwave could disable us as well. Lyra wanted to argue, to demand they remain until Kai was safe, but logic overrode emotion. If the Nomad was disabled, they would all be lost, and with them, any hope of using the converter energy to help the hybrids on Eloria. There, Tix called, their voice distorted through the environmental suit. Escape pod launching from the vessel's undercarriage. On the view screen, A small craft separated from the failing ship, its thrusters firing erratically as it attempted to stabilize. "Can we intercept?" Dara asked, moving to join Tix at the console. The suited figure shook their head. "Negative. The pod's trajectory is taking it directly toward Eloria. We could follow, but not intercept before planetary entry." "He's completing the mission," Lyra realized aloud. "He's using the escape pod to deliver the converter energy to the ice fields. Just as we planned." Dara looked at her sharply. "What mission? What converter energy?" Quickly, Lyra explained their discovery of the warming net prototype and their plan to use its energy to disrupt the mining operations on Eloria. As she spoke, understanding dawned in Dara's cybernetic eye. "A strike at the heart of the corporation's operations," the scavenger said with newfound respect. "Bold, but a single escape pod won't have much impact, even carrying converter energy." "It will if I help direct that energy," Lyra countered. "If we can get close enough to the impact site, I can connect with the pod, channel the energy for maximum effect." Dara studied her thoughtfully. "You can do that? From a distance?" "I've done it before," Lyra said, thinking of the corporate cruiser she had disabled. "With proper focus, yes." The scavenger captain made her decision quickly. "Brahm, set course for Eloria. Maximum speed. Tix, monitor the escape pod's descent path and identify the projected impact site." To Lyra, she added, "If we're going to strike at the corporation, let's make it count." As the Nomad's engines roared to life, propelling them toward Eloria in pursuit of the escape pod, Lyra silently promised Kai that his sacrifice, if that's what it proved to be, would not be in vain. One way or another, the hybrids would taste freedom today. The ice fields of Eloria grew larger in the Nomad's viewport, an endless expanse of blue-white that had once been Lyra's prison and was now the battlefield for her people's liberation. From orbit, the corporation's mining operations were visible as dark scars on the pristine surface. The massive extraction facilities surrounded by smaller structures where the workers, the slaves, were housed. "Escape pod trajectory confirmed," Tix announced from the sensor station. "Impact projected in Mining Sector 7, approximately 3 minutes from now." "Sector 7," Lyra repeated, a chill running through her that had nothing to do with Eloria's frozen surface. "That's where I worked, where I escaped from." "Appropriate symmetry," Dara observed, adjusting their approach vector. "We'll enter the atmosphere behind the pod, using its energy signature to mask our own from corporation sensors. But we won't be able to land immediately. The descent angle is too steep." "How close can you get me?" Lyra asked, already preparing herself mentally for what was to come. 10 kilometers. Maybe less if we push the atmospheric shielding to its limits," Dara replied. "Will that be close enough for what you need to do?" Lyra wasn't certain, but she nodded anyway. "It will have to be." On the view screen, the escape pod was now visible as it entered Eloria's atmosphere, its outer hull glowing red with the heat of re-entry. Trailing behind it was a stream of blue-white energy, the converter power leaking through the pod's damaged structure. "Corporation vessels detected," Tix warned. 3 patrol ships converging on the projected impact site. "They know what's coming," Dara said grimly. "They're moving to contain the situation." Lyra watched the pod's descent with growing anxiety. Kai was in that small craft, hurtling toward the ice fields at terminal velocity. Had he managed to secure himself for impact? Was the pod's safety system still functional? Or was he... She pushed the thought aside. Focus was essential now. Whatever Kai's fate, the best way to honor his sacrifice was to ensure it achieved its purpose. 2 minutes to atmospheric entry, Brahm announced from the pilot station. "Shields at maximum." "Take us in," Dara ordered. "Match the pod's descent vector as closely as possible." The Nomad shuddered as it hit Eloria's upper atmosphere, friction heating the ship's hull, despite the protective shields. Through the viewport, Lyra could see the escape pod still ahead of them, now trailing fire as well as energy, as it plummeted toward the ice fields. Corporation patrol vessels opening fire on the pod, Tix reported urgently, attempting to destroy it before impact. On the screen, flashes of energy lanced from the patrol ships toward the falling pod. Most missed, the pod's erratic descent making targeting difficult. But one bolt struck true, sending fragments of the outer hull spinning away. "No!" Lyra cried. Her hands pressed against the viewport as if she could somehow reach through it to protect Kai. "Pod integrity compromised, but still intact," Tix confirmed. "Descent continuing. Impact in 60 seconds. They were close enough now that Lyra could see details of the mining complex below. The massive extraction drills, the processing facilities, the worker barracks, and moving across the ice, tiny figures running in apparent panic as alarms blared. "They're evacuating," Dara observed. "The corporation knows what's coming." "Not evacuation," Lyra corrected, her enhanced vision allowing her to see what the others couldn't. "The workers are being herded into containment areas. The corporation is protecting its assets, not its people." Anger surged through her, cold and clarifying. The corporation viewed the hybrids as property to be preserved or disposed of, according to profit margins. It was time to show them the cost of such callousness. "Impact in 30 seconds, Tix announced. "Patrol vessels continuing evasive fire." "Get me as close as you can," Lyra said to Dara, determination hardening her voice. "And be prepared to withdraw immediately afterward. What I'm about to do will draw attention." Dara nodded, understanding without further explanation. "Brahm, take us to 10 kilometers above the impact site, then hold position." As the Nomad descended through Eloria's cloud layer, the full expanse of the mining complex came into view. It was larger than Lyra remembered, a sprawling industrial installation that stretched to the horizon in all directions. The corporation's greed writ large upon the frozen landscape. The escape pod was seconds from impact now, its trajectory taking it directly toward the central processing facility, where raw light crystal was refined and prepared for transport off-world. Corporation security forces had formed a perimeter around the facility, weapons aimed skyward in a futile attempt to stop what was coming. "Impact imminent," Tix said, the normally calm voice betraying tension. 3, 2, 1. The pod struck the ice with devastating force, penetrating the surface and plunging into the facility beneath. For a moment, nothing happened, a breathless pause as energy gathered and compressed. Then, explosion. But not the conventional blast of heat and debris that might have been expected. Instead, a dome of pure light erupted from the impact site, expanding outward in a perfect hemisphere. Where it touched the ice, transformation occurred, not violent melting, but a controlled phase change, solid to liquid in an instant. The processing facility collapsed as its foundation turned to water. The surrounding ice field rippled like a pond disturbed by a stone, concentric waves of light spreading outward. Corporation security forces caught in the expansion were not harmed, but rather disoriented. Their weapons and communication devices rendered useless by the energy surge. "It's working," Lyra breathed, watching as the light continued to spread. "But it's not enough. Not yet." This was what she had prepared for. Closing her eyes, Lyra reached out with her consciousness, seeking the familiar resonance of the converter energy now released on Eloria's surface. The distance made connection difficult, like trying to grasp smoke with bare hands. But then she felt it, a tendril of awareness linking her to the expanding dome of light. Through this connection, she could sense the energy dissipating, losing cohesion as it spread across the ice field. Focusing her will, Lyra began to shape the energy, directing it not outward in all directions, but along specific paths, toward the worker barracks, the security stations, the perimeter fences that kept the hybrids contained. The light responded to her guidance, flowing like water through channels she created in her mind. Where it touched the barracks, locks failed and doors slid open. Where it encountered security systems, they shut down or reset, temporarily disabled. And where it met the perimeter fences, the energy fields collapsed, leaving gaps in the corporation's carefully maintained barriers. Through her extended awareness, Lyra could sense the hybrids within the complex, hundreds of them, their genetic makeup resonating with her own. She sent them not just energy, but intention. Run, escape, be free. They understood. Perhaps it was their shared Aldari heritage, or perhaps simply the instinct for freedom that existed in all sentient beings. Whatever the cause, the hybrids began to move, cautiously at first. Then, with increasing confidence, as they realized the security systems that had constrained them were failing. Corporation patrol vessels regrouping, Tix warned, the voice seeming to come from a great distance as Lyra maintained her focus on the energy below. They're preparing to fire on the escaped workers. Without breaking her connection to the converter energy, Lyra spoke. Direct me. Tell me where they are. Dara understood immediately. Patrol Vessel 1, 3 kilometers east of the impact site, charging weapons. Lyra redirected a portion of the light energy, sending it surging toward the indicated location. The patrol vessel's systems overloaded instantly, its engines failing as it settled ungracefully onto the ice field. Patrol Vessel 2, directly below us, targeting escaped workers in Sector 3. Another surge. Another disabled ship. The corporation's attempts to contain the situation were failing as rapidly as their security systems. But the strain on Lyra was immense. Directing energy at such a distance required more focus, more strength than she had needed for previous connections. Her body trembled with the effort, sweat beading on her forehead despite the Nomad's climate-controlled environment. One more patrol vessel, Dara reported, concern evident in her tone as she noted Lyra's condition. Northwestern quadrant. But Lyra, you need to disengage. Your body can't sustain this level of energy channeling. Not yet. Lyra managed through gritted teeth. Almost. Done. With a final, desperate push of will, she directed the remaining converter energy toward the last patrol vessel. The surge struck true, disabling the ship's weapons and propulsion systems. But as the energy flowed through her, Lyra felt something within her begin to fail, cellular structures destabilizing under the strain. The very genetic modifications that allowed her to channel energy now breaking down. With a gasp, she severed the connection, collapsing to the deck as consciousness threatened to flee. Dara was at her side instantly, supporting her as she struggled to remain awake. It's done, Lyra whispered, her vision blurring. They're free. On the view screen, the evidence of her success was clear. Across the ice fields, hybrids were running, no longer contained by corporation barriers. Some had already reached the perimeter, disappearing into the frozen wastes beyond. Others were commandeering corporation vehicles, using them to carry more of their kind to freedom. And at the center of it all, where the escape pod had struck, a new phenomenon was occurring. The melted ice was not refreezing as might have been expected, but rather maintaining its liquid state, warmed by some continuing process beneath the surface. The warming net, Lyra realized, understanding dawning despite her weakened state. Kai modified the escape pod to activate it upon impact. It's not just disrupting the ice, it's transforming it, permanently. Creating a monument to your victory, Dara said, something like respect in her voice. And a rather significant problem for the corporation's mining operations. Indeed. The liquid pool was expanding slowly but steadily, converting more ice to water with each passing minute. It wouldn't melt all of Eloria. The planet was too large, the process too localized for that. But it would render this particular mining complex unusable for the foreseeable future. We should go, Brahm advised from the pilot station. Corporation reinforcements will arrive soon. They won't be pleased with what we've done here. What about Kai? Lyra asked, struggling to sit up despite her exhaustion. The escape pod. We need to search for survivors. Dara's expression softened, a rare display of genuine emotion from the hardened scavenger. Lyra. The pod impacted at terminal velocity. Even with safety systems, the chances of survival. We look, Lyra insisted, her tone leaving no room for argument. He would do the same for any of us. After a moment's consideration, Dara nodded. Tix, scan the impact site for life signs. Focus on the center of the melt zone. The suited figure worked the sensor controls with practiced efficiency. Difficult to get clear readings through the energy residue. But there's something. A faint biological signature approximately 50 meters beneath the surface. Hope surged through Lyra, giving her strength she didn't know she still possessed. We need to go down there, now. Impossible, Brahm countered. The melt zone is unstable, and we have no equipment for underwater retrieval. Actually, Dara said thoughtfully, we might. Tix's environmental suit is designed for vacuum exposure, but it should function adequately in water for a short period, and the ship's grappling system could be modified for retrieval operations. I can guide them, Lyra offered, struggling to her feet. My connection to the converter energy is weakened, but still present. I can sense where Kai is within the melt zone. Dara studied her critically. You're in no condition for a rescue operation. You can barely stand. I don't need to go into the water, Lyra clarified. Just maintain a connection from here. Direct Tix to the right location. After a moment's consideration, Dara nodded. Very well. Brahm. Bring us down as close to the melt zone as you safely can. Tix, prepare for underwater operation. Let's move quickly. Corporation reinforcements could arrive any minute. As the Nomad descended toward the expanding pool of water that had once been solid ice, Lyra prepared herself for one final effort. She was pushing her abilities beyond their limits, risking permanent damage to her already strained genetic structure. But for Kai, for the man who had saved her life, who had believed in her freedom when she herself had doubted, no risk was too great. The Nomad hovered at the edge of the melt zone, its landing struts resting precariously on the remaining solid ice. Tix, fully sealed in the environmental suit, moved to the cargo bay, where Brahm had hastily modified the ship's external grappling system into a makeshift retrieval harness. Remember, Dara instructed the suited figure. You'll have approximately 20 minutes of air supply in underwater mode. Find the target, secure the harness, and signal for extraction immediately. Tix nodded, the helmet of the environmental suit reflecting the blue-white glow still emanating from the melt zone. With a final equipment check, the scavenger stepped into the retrieval platform, which Brahm then lowered into the churning waters below. On the bridge, Lyra closed her eyes and reached out once more with her consciousness, seeking the fading resonance of the converter energy. It was more difficult now, the connection tenuous and fragile. But beneath the surface, she could still sense patterns of energy flow, and within those patterns, a familiar presence. Kai, she whispered, both to herself and through the communication link to Tix. 47 meters down, slightly east of the impact center, there's a pocket of air, the pod's emergency survival bubble. Guided by Lyra's directions, Tix descended into the depths of the melt zone. The water was clear, but full of swirling currents, as the warming net continued its work, converting ice to liquid with quiet efficiency. Minutes stretched like hours, as Lyra maintained the fragile connection, her strength waning with each passing moment. Through the link with Tix, she could sense their approach to the pocket where Kai's life signs pulsed weakly, but persistently. I see it, Tix's voice crackled through the communication system. The pod's survival section is intact, lodged between two ice formations, but the entry mechanism appears damaged. The converter energy, Lyra explained, her voice strained with effort. Focus it, like I showed you. Direct it at the locking mechanism. During their journey to Eloria, Lyra had demonstrated some basic energy manipulation techniques to the curious Tix. Now, that brief instruction might make the difference between life and death. Through their shared connection, Lyra felt Tix gather a small amount of the ambient energy and focus it on the pod's damaged lock. The mechanism sparked, then released, the hatch swinging open to reveal the interior. "He's here," Tix confirmed, relief evident even through the distortion of the communication system. "Unconscious but alive. Securing harness now." Lyra sagged against the console, her strength nearly depleted, but her spirit soaring. Kai was alive, against all odds. He had survived the impact, protected by the pod's emergency systems, even as it delivered its payload of transformative energy to the heart of the corporation's operations. "Extraction commencing," Brahm announced, activating the retrieval system. The cable went taut as it began to draw both Tix and the precious cargo back toward the surface. "Corporation vessels detected," Dara warned, checking the sensor displays. 3 cruiser-class ships entering the atmosphere. Estimated arrival, 7 minutes. "Enough time," Lyra assured her, though in truth, she wasn't certain. The extraction was proceeding slower than anticipated, the weight of both Tix and Kai straining the hastily modified system. After what seemed an eternity, the retrieval platform broke the surface of the melt zone, bearing both the suited figure of Tix and the unconscious form of Kai. Brahm operated the controls with careful precision, swinging the platform into the cargo bay as Dara sealed the external doors behind it. "We have them," Dara confirmed. "Initiating emergency launch sequence. Brahm, get us out of here." The Nomad's engines roared to life, lifting the ship from its precarious perch at the edge of the melt zone. Below, the transformation continued. Ice to water, solid to liquid, prison to freedom. Hundreds of hybrids were now visible across the complex, moving purposefully toward the perimeter, toward liberty. As the ship ascended through Aloria's atmosphere, Lyra made her way to the cargo bay, her steps unsteady, but determined. Tix had removed the environmental helmet and was administering emergency medical treatment to Kai, who lay pale but breathing on the deck. "Will he?" Lyra couldn't finish the question, fear constricting her throat. "He'll live," Tix assured her, looking up with a smile, the first time Lyra had seen the scavenger's face, revealing delicate features of a species she didn't recognize. The survival bubble protected him from the worst of the impact. Some broken bones, internal injuries, but nothing our medical unit can't handle. Relief washed over Lyra in a wave so powerful it nearly took her remaining strength. She knelt beside Kai, taking his hand in hers. His fingers were cold, perhaps the first time since she had known him that he felt the chill she had lived with all her life. "We did it," she whispered to his unconscious form. "The hybrids are free. The corporation's mining operation is crippled, and we're both still alive to see what comes next." As if in response to her voice, Kai's eyelids fluttered. He didn't wake fully, but his fingers tightened slightly around hers. Acknowledgement, perhaps, or simple reflex. Either way, it was enough. On the bridge, Dara watched the sensor displays with cautious optimism. "We've cleared the atmosphere. Corporation cruisers are in pursuit but falling behind. They're more concerned with containing the situation on the surface than chasing us." "Course?" Brahm asked, his hands steady on the controls. Dara glanced back at Lyra, who had joined them on the bridge after ensuring Kai was stable in the medical unit. "Your call. We had a deal. Help with your mission in exchange for knowledge about your abilities. That part of the bargain is fulfilled. Where to now?" Lyra considered the question. The outer colonies remained an option, a place where they could present their evidence of corporation crimes to the Galactic Council. But there was another possibility, one that called to her more strongly. "Back to Aloria," she said. Her decision made. "Not to the mining complex, but to the southern hemisphere. The scavenger networks you mentioned, they operate there, don't they? In the territories the corporation hasn't yet claimed? Dara nodded slowly, understanding dawning. You want to organize the escaped hybrids, create a resistance. The corporation won't simply accept what happened today, Lyra explained. They'll hunt down the escaped hybrids, reclaim what they consider their property, unless someone stands against them. A war against the Light Extraction Corporation? Dara asked, one eyebrow raised. That's ambitious. Not a war, Lyra corrected. A revolution. The hybrids are not alone. There are others who oppose the corporation's practices, scavengers like you, independent colonists, even some within the corporation itself, who recognize the injustice of what's happening. She thought of Jex, who had helped them despite his position within corporate security. Of the workers in the mining complex who weren't hybrids, but were still essentially slaves to corporate interests. Of the countless worlds where the corporation's influence spread like a shadow, stifling freedom and autonomy. The warming net was just the beginning, she continued. With the data we've gathered, with the evidence of what the corporation has been doing with the hybrids, we can build something stronger than any one of us alone. Dara considered this, her cybernetic eye whirring as it analyzed Lyra with new interest. A coalition of the corporation's enemies. It's been attempted before, without success. What makes you think it will be different this time? In answer, Lyra held out her hand, palm up, concentrating. She gathered the remaining energy within her cells, bringing it forth until her skin glowed with soft blue light. The effort was minimal now, the process almost natural, as if her body had adapted to the channeling of power, making it an extension of her will, rather than a strain on her system. Because this time, she said simply, we have something they don't expect. Something they created but failed to understand. Dara nodded slowly, a smile spreading across her face. Set course for the Southern Territories, she instructed Brahm. And notify our network. Tell them we're bringing a revolution. As the Nomad accelerated away from the corporate cruisers, Lyra returned to the medical unit where Kai was resting. His color had improved, and Tix reported that his vital signs were stabilizing. He would recover, in time to join the struggle that lay ahead. Sitting beside him, Lyra took his hand once more. It was warmer now, life returning to his limbs as the ship's medical systems worked to heal his injuries. She had spent her life seeking warmth, physical warmth to combat Eloria's perpetual chill. But what she had found was something deeper, the warmth of connection, of purpose, of fighting for something larger than herself. She was no longer Unit 7219, a corporate asset to be used and discarded. She was Lyra, a leader in a nascent revolution, and for the first time since her escape from the ice fields, she felt truly, completely warm. Outside the viewport, stars stretched into lines of light as the ship accelerated toward its destination. Somewhere among those stars, the corporation's directors were likely already planning their response to the day's events, mobilizing resources to recapture their escaped property and punish those responsible. Let them come, Lyra thought, watching the star lines with newfound determination. They would find not a frightened fugitive, but a force gathering strength, not a slave seeking shelter, but a leader building an army. They had created her to absorb and channel light. Now they would learn what happened when that light was turned against them, not as a weapon, but as a beacon of hope for all those still living in the shadow of corporate control. The revolution had begun, and it would burn with the warmth of freedom.